Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast. Neal Oates Jr., Robin Lewis. We are going to have some fun in this episode because Mr. Robin Lewis, we are talking about the G in Big Life, and that is give yourself away. Are you ready for this one, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm very much ready for this one. And I want to first say thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. We're glad that you take time out to do this. And our goal, our whole reason for doing this is to add value to you, to empower you so that you can add value and empower others. And so we're going to talk about the G. Tell me when you're ready and we'll jump right in.
So Robin, I know that there are pieces of the big life that are important to you, right? And the whole framework is good. But
Yes.
When it comes to giving yourself away, first, when we say G and give yourself away in this big life framework, that can already be offsetting to some people. That could make them nervous. They might say, I don't have enough to give away. If I give away, I'm not going to have enough for myself, for my loved ones, for my company, right? And so I know you're going to cover, or we're going to cover that today. But man, I'm excited to see what we're going to say today, because even though we have our notes, sometimes that mastermind comes together and that additional spirit comes into the room. So I'm ready for you to take it away, brother. Let's go.
Right on, sir. It's a pleasure for me to do this with you, actually. I just want to do a quick recap for our listeners. We talked about Big Life as an acronym. So the BIG, the big, is the first part of that. And quite frankly, Neal said it on an episode where success leaves clues. And so what these acronyms are, the B, the I, the G, and then the LIFE, but we're going to focus on the BIG today just for a recap, is for principles that lead to success. Principles that, if applied, will help us to live into our potential. The first one was to believe in yourself. And that's about self-worth and self-image. And I heard Erwin McManus the other day say it's about accepting your calling and accepting your battle and accepting your value. And that's the B, right? And these are subjects that we're going to be talking about in the future. This is just a framework we're giving you. We're not covering each of these principles in just one episode. It's impossible. But we're laying the framework for you, our listeners, so that you can get a feel for where we're going, because success leaves clues. So the B is believe in yourself. The I is to invest in yourself. And the idea here is that the only guarantee that tomorrow will get better is today's growth. The only way we're going to live into our potential is to grow into our potential. And we believe that there are areas, specific areas in regards to success and living a life of significance. There are areas that we can invest in to improve in. And we're going to be talking about that on our episodes going forward. But the principle there is that the only way to live into our potential is to invest, to improve. And then today we're going to talk about the G, as Neal said, and the G is to give yourself away, to give yourself away. And what we're talking about there is about servant leadership. You know, we're talking about sowing seeds that add value to people every day. And it doesn't matter what your faith. I think we can all agree that Jesus was one of the greatest, if not the greatest leader to have ever lived. His followers called him Rabbi. His followers called him Master. And they were having dinner together one evening. And in fact, it was just before his death. And so you think about this now, Jesus, knowing that he was on death row, so to speak, He wanted to share what was most important for him to share with his followers. And what he did that night is not only share, but he demonstrated. And so while they were at the dinner table, Jesus came away from the table. He got a basin filled with water and he got a towel, and he literally went around that table and he washed his friends, his followers, his disciples. He washed their feet. He used his hands and the towel that he had to dry. And he said to them that you must do what you see me doing. And the idea it was an amazing example to his followers. And that's what the G is all about. It's about serving others. I heard Andy Stanley give a talk one day years ago. He said, if you are the most important, the most powerful person in the room, what's the one thing that you should do? And he said, you should serve the people. And a concept is the idea that we need each other. The only way we're going to live into our potential is with others. You see, there's nobody that's done anything of significance on their own. And so when we think about the fact that we need each other, then it starts with serving each other. Now, I want to tie this in, Neal, by sharing a definition of success that I've heard. The definition of success, I actually wrote it down here. It says, success is knowing your purpose, growing to your maximum potential, and sowing seeds that add value to others every day. The entire universe, except for one tiny exception, consists of others.
Now hold on, Robin. I know where you're going with this. That tiny exception. Tell me what that tiny exception is, sir.
Come on now, Neal. In other words, the world doesn't revolve around me, right? I'm the tiny exception to the 8 billion people. And by the way, yes, for those of you who listened to one of our previous episodes, I looked that up. There's approximately 8 billion people in our world today. And so the one tiny exception is me, right? There's 8 billion others in this world. And so, the idea here of the G is to serve, is to sow seeds that add value to people every day. And so,
So, Robin, before we go there, the whole idea of sowing seeds, I'm going to play on the other side because we don't know everyone's background, what their experience with life has been here. But you're asking me to give myself away, to sow seeds. Like I have a limited supply of seeds in my hand. And we don't take that for granted. We're not naive, right? We understand that you're looking at what you have and you might be counting and you say, well, I only have enough for me. And now Robin and Neal, who have an abundance of seeds, we're assuming. I mean, yes, they can give because they have plenty. They can pour out and share to others. They can give time to others because all they do all day is sit and talk on a camera and a podcast. Yes, they can give resources because they've made money in business. It's easy for them, right? But you're talking about giving of ourselves, sowing these seeds, right, to improve others. Just continue on. I just wanted to let people know that we understand and that we are right there with them. So regardless of the perception that they have of how easy it is for us to sow because we're here on camera or behind a mic, that we're inoculated from the challenge, from the questions, the doubt of looking at the seeds that we have in our hand and saying, okay, I've got to pour these out. I've got to put these into the ground, into fertile soil.
Yes, and it's so true, and it's why we have to talk about this. It's why this is one of those principles, because it might not come naturally. My tendency is to hold on to the seeds. To be honest with you, my tendency is to think that I don't have enough, and to look about myself. We talked a little bit about that before, Neal. We're not saying here that you're not looking about yourself. What we are saying is you want to try to do your best to put your focus on others. You want to do your best to add value to others. You want to do your best to create win-win scenarios. You want to do your best to serve, recognizing that people are above whatever agenda it is that we have, right? So follow up with that, what you were saying about sowing seeds. The idea here is that the principle of sowing and reaping is that if you sow seeds, if you plant seeds of corn, you're going to reap corn. If you sow seeds of mangoes, you're going to reap mangoes. If you sow seeds of pineapple, you're going to reap pineapple, and so on. Oranges, you're going to reap oranges, right? And the same thing holds true here. If you sow seeds that add value, you are going to reap value. But the important thing, and why the importance of the G, is that, folks, what I'm suggesting that I'm learning, and I would suggest that you consider, is that we place the focus more on sowing the seeds, knowing that the harvest will come. If we do better at sowing the seeds, knowing that the harvest will come, but not focusing on the harvest, take our eyes off of the harvest. I remember John Maxwell saying that at the end of the day, he measures his day not by the harvest that he reaps. If I can be transparent with you, a lot of times I'm looking at the harvest. What did I gain today? How did it go? What did I get? But he's suggesting that he measures his day by the seeds he sows, knowing that if you sow the seeds, you're going to reap the harvest.
Now, Robin, before we go even further, when we sow, so here's what I love, and I don't want us to miss this opportunity, that when we sow one seed, we're not getting one kernel of corn back.
Come
Right? When
on.
we sow wheat, we put one seed in the ground, we're not getting one stalk of wheat back. Right. And so and this is where we have to challenge. And you mentioned John Maxwell and ourselves. So there is a knowing, even when there is a doubt, when there is a hesitancy, because we want to make sure that we're doing our part, that we don't hold that thing in our hand. And so I know you're going to continue. So go ahead. And so really quickly, I know we have our notes, but I do want to make sure that we share with the audience what a practical sowing of the seeds of giving of themselves looks like in different areas of life. Because I know the first thing a lot of people are thinking, money, like Neal and Robin on here asking for money. Like, no, we're not saying that it has to be finances. There are different ways to give ourselves away that we probably are blinded to just because it hasn't been placed in front of us or framed the right way. So continue, sir.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we are going to get to that, sir. And please chime in as we do. There another Zig Ziglar quote that I heard years ago that resonated with me is that if you help enough other people get what they want, that you will get what you want. So it's a principle, it's a perspective. We've talked about perspective before, and the perspective is this: that if you help enough people get what they want, then it's automatic that you're going to get what you want. But the focus there is on helping them to get what they want. I remember it was probably around 20 years ago, Neal, I was attending a conference. It was called the Catalyst Conference, and it was to help develop leaders from all spectrums. There were people of faith, nonprofits, as well as people in the business community. And so it was a leadership conference, and it was founded, one of the founders of that conference was John Maxwell. And in this particular event, it's a yearly event. In this particular one, he was recognized with the Lifetime Leadership Achievement Award. The Lifetime Leadership. Very few people receive this award, and they gave this award to John Maxwell this year. And so every person that gets that award is given the opportunity to share something. This was a room filled with about 5 to 10,000. I don't have the exact number, but an arena filled with leaders. And you think about this now, he's sharing. It's very important as he has received this award. And I'll never forget the day that he shared. And not only did he share very emotionally, tearfully, you can tell that he was talking to us like he was talking to his grandchild. that kind of sharing that he was doing. And at the end, he actually prayed over all of us that was in that arena. And what he shared is what I want to share with you. He says, when you get right down to it, it's about adding value to people every day. Neal, this is what he said, what we're talking about right now. He said it's about adding value to people every day. And then he shared the way. He shared, so that's what you were asking for, and that's what I'm about to share right now. He shared how we can add value to people every day. And the first thing that he said is that we have to value people. So, Neal, you're right. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about money here. We're talking about adding value to people, period. And the first way we go about doing that is valuing people. See, how we see people is how we treat people.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned the book on another episode, The High Road Leadership, which is a book by John Maxwell that came out not too long ago. And in that book, he expanded a little bit upon this concept about how we see people is how we treat people. And we're all leaders trying to accomplish a vision, but the way we interact with others will be determined by our perspective of people, right? And so I have some things I wrote down from that book about how we see people. If I see you as hurting, I'll want to help you. If I see you as broken, I'll want to fix you. If I see you as inconvenient, I'll want to ignore you. If I see you as an obstacle, I'll want to remove you. If I see you as competition, I'll want to defeat you. But if I see you valuable, I'll want to serve you. So the point here is to recognize the value in people. And why that gets hard sometimes is because, we get into our own circle sometimes, and we value people that maybe have the same beliefs that we do. And people can do some things sometimes that might cause us to not value them, right? And
Yeah.
those are the ones that we need to value because they're people. And so, if I see people as anything less than valuable, then I won't serve them. And if I won't serve them, then I'm putting my agenda ahead of their best interests.
So,
And
Robin,
so the
on that,
first thing is to value people.
but right there, we have two things that's hard for us. The first one is to one, see value in someone else, because now this does not mean that we don't find value in ourselves. We want to reiterate that. However, for me to see you as valuable in today's day and age, if I see Robin as a person of value, my mind is going to tell me that that means I have to see myself as less valuable, right? Because that ego edging God out wants to start playing with, hey, if you value him or her, if you're going to serve her or them, now all of a sudden you have to become less than, and that requires something of us. And then the service part, right? You don't find many people who wake up excited about this idea of service, of making sure that we help, that we assist, that we provide, that we do, that we lead in that way. They're saying, hey, I want to be served. I want someone to call me valuable or to recognize my value by their willingness and excitement to serve me. So not only perspective, but mindset here. And this is not an easy thing, ladies and gentlemen. So as you hear Robin and I speak, it is not that, oh, it's a frivolous action. Just wake up today and decide that you're going to serve because you see everyone as valuable. It might require work. Many of us have things that we have to go back and look at, one, to make sure that you see value in yourself. What we know is it's going to be really tough to see someone else as valuable if you don't see yourself as valuable first. So when Robin said that if you are the most important person in the room, the one thing that you should be doing is serving those around you. That's what's going to help you get that fulfillment in life. So as you hear us, I just want to remind you, you are valuable first of all. then the more valuable that you are, the easier it's going to be for you to find value in others, to see the value that they are, and then be willing to serve them on a daily basis. And just really quickly, this is not a one-time do it and I've done my service for my lifetime, Robin. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Let the harvest come in. The big harvest is a daily sowing, a daily serving, a daily giving of yourself, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm so glad you said it because it's so true. It starts with valuing ourselves. In fact, it's hard to value others if we don't value ourselves. So it starts. So I'm so glad you pointed that out because that's the B, right? In our big life acronym. And so it starts with seeing value in yourself also because you are valuable. And we talked about that before, but as people, we are valuable. If you're a human being, you're valuable. That's the point. Yes. Neal, as you said, as you were describing our listener that might have a hard time with that, or our listener who is looking out for themselves and wants to be the one that's valued by others and so on. You're describing where I was. And so I can 100% relate. In fact, I still have to check my motive in this regard. And I'm going to suggest to our listeners today, actually, that this is something that we have to continuously check because it could very well be that we are placing ourselves above others. And it's very easy for us to see it. We can see it outside in others. We can hear about transactions that people do where you wonder, how could they do that? And they were really just looking out for themselves, right? We all know those stories. We experience it every day, and we are all capable of that. So I'm so glad you said that. And I also concur with you. I reiterate that this is not something that happens overnight, yet it's something that we shouldn't even really have to talk about also, right? There's two sides of that. Just think about it. We're all people. We're not better than anybody else. Nobody's any lesser than we when it comes to being people. We're all just perfectly imperfect human beings, and each unique, as we spoke about before. And in that regard, we're all valuable because we're people. We're human beings. The second part of this, should I jump on, or you have anything to add there?
Keep going, sir. Let's rock.
The second one of how to add value to people, first, value people. Then number two is to get to know and understand what others value. So here's where we're talking about now, be genuinely interested in others. What we're talking about here is that we must listen to others and to do the work to get to understand them better. I was reading another book recently, and the suggestion was that we need to broaden our minds. Our tendency is we kind of stay in a circle. We read the books that kind of substantiate our beliefs. We have friends and people that we associate with that kind of substantiate our beliefs. And so as a result, we have a perspective that's influenced by those beliefs, that set of beliefs, right? Mm-hmm. And what they were suggesting to me is to broaden my perspective. So here we're talking about being empathetic. We're talking about get to really understand. Neal, where I get caught up in this sometimes I am more inclined to want to correct people than to get to understand what their perspective is, why it is that they think the way that they think. I could be 100% right in the way that I think, but rather than trying to convince them of that, which I do, I err on that side from time to time. And rather, what I should do, and I'm trying to get better at this, is to ask questions and be curious and really try to get to understand why it is, how they think, first of all, what it is that they're thinking, what's behind that, and try to understand why they think the way that they think. Mm-hmm. And as I do that, the only way that I can really add value to them is to really understand where they're coming from. That's the point there. I really cannot add value to them if I don't really take the time to get to know and understand what they value. Anything to chime in there?
So once again, this requires us to care enough about someone else to be interested in them. And so, one of the things that I have been taught over, I'm going to say, the past dozen years is that we should not focus on being the most interesting, but focus on being the most interested,
I
right?
like
And the
it.
more interested we are in people, the more interesting we become to them. Because here's what we know that when people are empathetic, when people care about us, when they ask questions, all of a sudden we find ourselves drawn to them because it is so unusual for individuals today to care about someone else first. Well, right now, it's unusual, unfortunately, to find individuals who care about anyone else at all, right? But when I come to you, Robin, how was your day? And this is something that when you and I have our one on ones and we're having these conversations, we find ourselves serving each other, trying to outserve each other. So it's always a fun volley back and forth where we have to say, all right, you get 5 questions, I get 5 questions, you get five. Otherwise, one of us will find ourselves just so interested in what the other has done since our last interaction that the other one doesn't get to talk or ask, right? And so I love that. And I think that's important. If we will focus on being more interested in individuals instead of being more interesting to individuals, that we really will find ourselves being able to be those servant leaders, giving ourselves away and then moving towards that big life that we're talking about.
So one practical thing that I can tell you, can be transparent with our listeners on this, Neil, is that sometimes I have a hard time remembering friends, good friends of mine, their kids' names. And so I might find myself with them and I want to ask about their child and I don't remember the name. So I'm hesitant to even ask about them because I don't know the name. To me, if I really value them, I'm going to get to know the name of their kid. I'm going to get to know their kid, right? Because their kid is valuable to them,
Yeah.
right? And that's just an example of where this plays. So it's not automatic, and it's not where Neil and I are not standing before you saying that we've conquered this, but we know it to be true. If you think about that, don't you think that I would value and add value to somebody if I am taking the time to get to know what's important to them, like their child, their son or daughter?
So, Robin, let me interrupt you. That is, so I'm in the kids ministry at church, and my wife's job is to know the adults, the parents. My job is to know the kids. So there's nothing and you're talking about this, and I'm thinking of the joy that the parents feel. I have no idea what their names are because I don't interact with them on a daily or weekly basis. I do interact with their kids. So as I'm sitting in the auditorium and I see the parents checking the kids in, and I have the microphone that echoes through the entire auditorium, and I say something like, John Luke is in the building, and his parents hear his name in there. They're like, oh my gosh, they know our baby. Right. And this goes back to the whole idea. If we do that for every kid, and then when we see the parents come up, I might not know the parent's name, but I know whose child is theirs, and they're coming up. And I'm like, hey, Logan, it's time to go home. Your parents said, and now they're like, oh my gosh, this is someone that cares about what we care about. And here's something in business that I've been trained by my mentors. If you can get people's heart, they will give you their money. Right. And that's so when we say money, it could be if you can get their heart, they'll give you their time, they'll give you their appreciation, they will give you their affection, they will do favors for you, they will go out of their way. So if I can know what people care about, if it's going to be their dog or travel or their health or the dream that they have on the other side, if we can get to know that stuff, if we care about what they care about, then we'll see that they care about us and what we care about. And too often we're trying to force others to care about what we care about, and they don't know that we care about them at all. Right. And so I think that as we develop this, it becomes this cycle, uplifting cycle and we find ourselves just winning, and then the harvest is bountiful, and then we're like, okay, let me sow more seeds, let me serve others, not because we want to be self-serving, because we know we're going to get a return, but we start finding ourselves living differently, walking differently, having different energy when we interact. And I think all of that is important. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's so true. And that is so good, sir. Thanks for sharing. Understanding, we value people. We get to know and understand what they value. And then the third one is that we make ourselves more valuable. So that's the I and the G, right? The point there is that we can't give what we don't have. So what you were talking about, the person that thinks like they don't have something to give, well, we need to make ourselves more valuable. And that's the idea of investing to improve. That's the idea of making yourself more valuable. The only guarantee that tomorrow will get better is today's growth. So in order for us to add value to people, we have to make ourselves more valuable. We have to be able to have something. We can't give what we don't have. And so that's a part of adding value to people, is to make ourselves more valuable. And we talked a little bit more about that in the under the I. And so I'm not going to spend too much time there unless you want to add anything there, Neil.
Nope, no, sir. So as we get ready to wrap up, go ahead and just get us going in like the next 4 or 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. So the last one is so you value people, you get to know and understand what they value, you make yourself more valuable because you can't give what you don't have. And then the last one is that you love people unconditionally. And the L in life, the L in the big life, is to let love be your guide. And so we're going to be talking more about that when we get to the L in the big life. But for today, what we're talking about here is it's one of those kind of things where we shouldn't need to talk about love people unconditionally, right? Because all of us want to be loved. I want you to love me unconditionally, Neil. I mess up and I still want you to love me. But yet, the reality is that when people are mean or people do us bad or do us something wrong or believe completely different, or the way they live, their lifestyle or whatever is completely different than ours, or what, then it's where the love gets challenged. And what we're suggesting here is that love is a choice. And we are to love people unconditionally. This means forgiveness. This means, not allowing anything to get in the way of your love for others. So wrapping up, nothing worthwhile is ever accomplished on our own. We need people and people need us. And so we're giving to and we're serving others and we're creating a win-win. The idea is a win-win. Yes, we as leaders, we have our agendas. There are visions, there are goals that need to get accomplished. There are problems that need to be solved, right? Leadership is really all about accomplishing a vision, right? A goal, or maybe it's about a change that you want to see make happen, a cause, right? We're all leaders that we're talking to on this. And we're not saying that agenda is going to be thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
Or more importantly, what we're saying is that when people come above the agenda, that's when it's a problem. But if we put people above the agenda, then we have more opportunity and more chance to actually accomplish the agenda. So it's still about accomplishing the agenda. We're not saying to put the agenda aside. What we are saying is that it cannot come above people. And if we're serving people and we're valuing people and we're adding value to people, we will be able to, people will actually join in to help us to accomplish the vision and accomplish the goal. If we're helping people to, I heard another person put it this way, is that as leaders, what we want to do is we want to fight for the highest good of those that we're leading.
Mm-hmm.
So those people that are a part of our family, a part of our team, a part of our organization, a part of our life, what we want to do is to fight for their highest good. And as we fight for their highest good, they will join in and support you in what you're doing. And we can create this win-win scenario. And so
Good stuff there.
Yes, sir. Neil.
So really quickly, Robin, hold on, because I want to give them some practical ideas, and I have your framework here when it comes to give yourself away. And so I just want to remind them really quickly of some practical ways when we talk about give yourself away, and we this whole idea of selfless servant leadership, and we're not only talking about finances, right? So I just want to just give them some quick ideas. Give your belief to others, give your attention to others, give your time to others, give your resources, your talents, your support, and then ultimately give your big life for the benefit of others. And so maybe one of those, maybe you're thinking, I don't have the resources, but I have attention. I listen very well. Well, that might be the best way to give yourself to your family members or your significant other. Maybe that's how you're going to give yourself to your children. I remember the saying that kids spell love Time, right? Maybe you're going to give them your attention. Maybe someone in your job, your employer or an employee or a colleague needs you to give your belief to them. The fact that you believe that the world is not going to the waste basket, right? That there is hope, that the economy is okay, that they have the strength, the courage to make the sales or hit their quota at the end of the month. We know that the holiday season can always be a tricky time of the year or the beginning of the year. Maybe someone needs our talents and we can give them our talents to an organization or to your job. Maybe you've been hesitant to really show your talents because you're like, well, it's easy to me. I don't see there's any value in that, when that's the one thing that people in your sphere or organizations and corporations might need. And then finally, giving your support, right? As you give yourself away, maybe it's just your support, not in your dream, but maybe someone else is doing something, building something, and they just need one person, you or I, to come in and say, hey, let's do this. Or as Robin Lewis says, I'm right here with you. One of the toughest times in me and my wife's life was when our house got flooded. And no matter when I called Robin, he would say, Neal, I'm right here with you. And I believed it. Why? Because every time I called and every interaction we had, you've been right there with us when I didn't need anything else. I just needed support. I knew that Robin was giving me support and he was right there with me. So personally, for me and my family, Robin, I want to tell you, thank you for giving yourself away when it comes to your attention to us, your belief in us, the time, resources, talents, and support, and ultimately giving that big life to the benefit of myself and our audience. Very big deal. So I am a recipient of you giving yourself away, and I am indebted to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for saying that. And as we wrap it up, I would just say to our listeners, this is not something that we're going to conquer. You're not going to conquer this in one setting. If this is a new concept to you, or if you feel like yourself fighting against this, I would encourage you to just continue listening, continue joining. We're going to be talking more and more about these subjects and diving into different aspects of it as we move forward. Thank you for being here with us. And as Neal always says, we encourage you to subscribe so that you get notification of the next episode, to comment. We would love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe there's something you can add to what we're saying, or maybe there's something you can challenge, or maybe there's something that you really appreciate. Whatever it might be, we would love to hear from you. Share your comments. And if you find value, please share this with others.
Absolutely. So, Robin, as always, I find value in this. That's why we continue to do it. So I know that I personally am sharing this. I've made it my mission to get the big life out there, to be an example of the big life. And so here's what Robin and I want to remind you. We want to remind you that as we wrap up this episode, that we love you, God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time you see us or we see you, we're right there with you. Bye.